Bitcoin is a gift from God. It's a miracle. The number of open source projects that can be as successful as Bitcoin, there won't be another one in 100 years. Maybe every 10 years there's one that has a moderate success, an open source project like that, but it's extremely rare. It's more rare than winning the lottery. It's more rare than getting struck by lightning.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Bitcoin is Hard. This is a Choice App production about Bitcoin and personal finance. I'm your host, Brian Harrington. Today we have Trevor with us. And today, as Tim Ferriss, the great podcaster, says, do stuff that scratches your own itch. Cover topics that you're interested in and you're genuinely getting something out of. And so, audience, like with me today, this is something I've been wanting to talk about. I've been wanting to cover Web3 and DeFi on Bitcoin. And I think Trevor from the Stacks community is a perfect guy to just join us today and walk us through that. But first off, we have to cover beards and both of our beard roadmaps and how that's going. So, Trevor, what's up, man? How long have you had the beard, and what is your approach to this?
Oh yeah, what a great topic, man. I mean, it takes one to know one. Definitely appreciator of your awesome beard. I've been growing this for maybe actually about 10 years now, so I don't even know what my face looks like anymore. I've kind of aged underneath here, and I haven't seen what I look like. Um, my approach has just been sort of, I mean, I always tell, I get a lot of women specifically are always curious about the beard. They're like, "What's that like?" I'm like, "Well, it actually doesn't probably take as much effort as most people think." I would imagine, as a guy, I don't put much to my hair. I put a little more into my beard. I would say it's similar to maybe the effort that I expect maybe women would put into when they have longer hair, or when a guy has longer hair, for example. So, um, great way to kick it
Love
off.
it. Love it. Love it. So I've been growing my beard for about 7 years now. Kind of the same thing. I still have my license picture, no beard. And I have this funny picture of like me doing this like boring politician stuff with a bow tie on, no beard, and BTC Pins likes to joke that the bow tie is still down there somewhere, but it's just we haven't seen it in a while. And same thing. So I've like I use like beard wash on my beard way more often than like I don't like using shampoo like on my hair. And by beard, like it does help. And then also realize this when you're on video a lot, I like wearing darker colored shirts is like definitely something I should do more of, because when I wear white shirts, like you're definitely able to just like kind of see like through it, because I'm very much in like a growing out period right now, and I'm trying to
Yeah,
grow my mustache over my mouth. I'm trying to like achieve the full like just like not to the mouth like thing. So that's something I'm currently working on.
I love it. So I actually lived in Shanghai for 5 years in China, and
Okay.
I used to joke with my expat friends. I wouldn't say this to my Chinese friends, but I would say like, "Hey, if something goes down between U.S. and China, the CCP comes for me. This is my disguise. I just shave it and then I get out of the country."
Yep. Perfect, man. That's awesome. The expat perspective is important, I think, also when it comes to just cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, obviously. But okay, so the topic of today, Trevor, like tell us about yourself, tell us about Stacks, tell us about your fund, and you set the table in a broad way of just what do you feel like needs to be said for the goal of introducing Web3 and DeFi as you see it to Bitcoin holders.
Great. Yeah. So my name is Trevor Owens. I'm the managing partner of Stacks Accelerator. We are an accelerator on one side, where we are about a $6 million fund right now, writing 50K checks in a target of 300 companies. And then we also have another side, which we just announced recently, which is the Bitcoin Odyssey Fund, which we launched in partnership with OKCoin and the Stacks Foundation, which is a much larger fund, $165 million, a group of 20 venture capitalists. It's the largest group of venture capitalists just focused on investing in Bitcoin related startups. And so specifically as well around Web3 and on Stacks. And we're also interested in investing in other things that make Bitcoin a platform for Web3, that make Bitcoin able to develop as what we see it as being the settlement layer of the entire, decentralized future internet. Um, my background is coming as an entrepreneur over the past decade. I used to I'm most known for launching an education company called Lean Startup Machine, where we worked with the creator of the Lean Startup method, Eric Ries, and we turned his book into a 3-day training program that I grew all around the world to over 150 cities. One of the startups I happened to work with during that time was the founders of Stacks. And so I was one of the first advisors to the founders. I helped them with their early raise and helped them with their application of Y Combinator. And then I did that for a lot of companies all around the world. And so I'm just sort of continuing on that path. My focus really is I don't even think of myself as a VC day to day. I make that mistake sometimes where I forget, like when I'm talking to founders, that like I have to keep in mind that I'm maybe there's a dynamic in play where I'm the VC, because I just think of myself as a founder, and I think of the
Mhm.
founders I'm working with as my friends, and like the way I talk to them is like they're a friend of mine, as opposed to uh, being a VC, which I honestly think makes someone become a much better VC. Among the VCs that I've worked with, the best ones are operators come from a founders background. They know how to talk to founders, work with founders. And I think the longer time you spend as a VC, the worse you become as a VC, because you just sort of focus on your mindset and sort of maybe a top-down approach to thinking. Whereas entrepreneurs, what's really important is a bottom-up way of thinking. And I'm also a full-stack developer, so I code in like Python, Ruby, Erlang, Elixir. Those are my favorite web frameworks. I do front end, I do back end. I'm also strong on the marketing side. I've basically held like every role in a startup, kind of, and that's like what you end up doing is in a startup is you become a generalist, or a T-shaped individual where you're a jack of all trades and a master of one or two. And so with Stacks Accelerator, with the Bitcoin Odyssey Fund, you know, our entire thesis is that we're currently in a world where we believe that the potential for Web3, we're just at the tip of the spear. We believe it can grow, you know, in order of magnitude, it could be 10x in the next 5 years, let's say. And currently, the way it works is that Bitcoin is the gateway drug into crypto. Um, Fundamentally, I think Bitcoin is the strongest store of value. I think that people from Ethereum who say Ethereum is ultrasound money, I think, are just repeating talking points and pushing their own bags, or maybe they genuinely are misguided and don't understand why Bitcoin is the hardest money there is. Um, and so with Stacks, I see that it's a essentially like a layer 1.5. It's not like Lightning. Lightning is a layer 2, where layer 2s are only able to extend the functionality of the layer 1. They're not able to add new functionality, at least as we know it today. Some people may debate that it's possible, but my argument is it's not practical. I mean, Lightning is designed for a very specific use case, which is scaling payments. There's no global state to it. So I think that's one of the issues as well in the Bitcoin community, is that we have a lot of people who are really smart on the economic side, but maybe not as well versed on the tech side. A lot of the people I get into arguments with aren't developers or haven't built startups before in the Bitcoin maxi community. And so with Stacks, it's created a novel consensus mechanism called proof of transfer. It's a kind of, you can think of it like a proof of spend, and it models a Nakamoto consensus. So it models proof of work. It has some elements of proof of work and a few elements of proof of stake. It's not proof of stake, um, and it doesn't have the same problems that proof of stake has, but it also doesn't have the scalability problems of proof of work, because we use Bitcoin as a proof of spend, and that Bitcoin functions as um, a store of the work, right? So Bitcoin is proof of work. That's a storage of that energy of that proof of work, and then we're using that to mine new blocks of Stacks. And then Stacks introduces all of the same smart contract functionality that you'd expect from Ethereum. And so a bigger problem as well in the Bitcoin Maxi community is people say, oh well, Taproot and like Bitcoin has smart contracts, and like that's not what anyone who uses Web3 would consider smart contracts. We're talking fully expressive smart contracts. We're talking NFTs. We're talking DeFi. We're talking, apps talking to each other, and being able to do much more than Bitcoin can do today. Um, and so, we believe that there's going to be a future where through Stacks, every Bitcoin wallet will be integrated with Stacks, and every Bitcoiner will be able to access smart contracts and Web3 without ever having to go to Ethereum or Solana, etc. Most people they come to Bitcoin first, which is great. Bitcoin is also it's a single purpose blockchain, which is what makes it so solid in terms of the attack surface is so small, and so it's incredibly powerful as a store of value, and it's also incredibly powerful actually as a settlement layer, which is what a lot of people don't realize is that the real value of Bitcoin may not even be the coin, but maybe the space on the blockchain, maybe the actual amount that you can write to the blockchain, like that space, that real estate that you get when you write your data to the blockchain. The ability for that to scale up and have multiple layers on top of Bitcoin, where all the transactions settle down to there, makes Bitcoin an order of magnitude more valuable and more sustainable long term. It's going to, with Stacks, it's going to increase the use cases for Bitcoin. It's going to increase the value of the block space, um, and it's potentially going to eat into the market share of Ethereum and Solana. So, from my opinion, coming into this ecosystem, I was like, man, Stacks is like the best, should be the best friend of Bitcoin. Should be like anyone who's a Bitcoiner, you should love Stacks because Stacks is gonna you know eat market share of Ethereum and make Bitcoin way more valuable. Let's go. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no other decentralized leaderless blockchain that
Mm-hmm.
can become a globally accepted currency. Like
Mm-hmm.
this was a gift from God. This is a gift from God. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
on the same page as most Bitcoin maxis. I think the difference is, and I think actually a lot of the smartest Bitcoin maxis are on the same page, but there is sort of a small community of people who, you know, um, some good intentions, some bad intentions, are still stuck in the 2017 crypto world, where hey, all these ICOs and scams and altcoins really don't add any value, and I empathize with that. Like I literally was a crypto skeptic until last year, until I saw the actual use case of DeFi, the actual value of NFTs, and I tried it and used it myself. I was like, you know, I had friends who would say like, oh, like, Web3 is never going to happen. It's going to go to zero. And I'd be like, yeah, like I agree because I didn't see the it turning the corner. I didn't see
Mm-hmm.
the I saw the potential, but I didn't see that it had the momentum to actually get there because something can be grounded in a good idea. There's so many other things that have to go right for that to come into reality. And so, um, I'm a recent convert, I would say, to the Web3 belief, and I think that Stacks has the potential to be one of the most valuable contributors to the Bitcoin ecosystem. In fact, we already are the largest community of developers building on Bitcoin, more than Lightning, more than any other project in terms of active developers. We're bringing in the most capital to the Bitcoin ecosystem to develop on Bitcoin, and I think that it's a great thing for the future of Web3. It's like it's a great thing actually. There's competition. Like it's a good thing for Ethereum that there's a Solana. It's a good thing for Bitcoin that there's an Ethereum. The fact that we have all these options is a great thing and should be encouraged. And with Stacks, we're doing a lot of good for the Bitcoin community. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so perfect tee up. Three things. One thing that I've been doing this year in 2022 is trying to just throw out all old baggage. Like I'm starting fresh from just Bitcoin is my base money and starting fresh with like all other ideas back on the table and just throwing off old baggage. And that's from every side. Like Bitcoin Cash, ICOs, like all of this stuff is just, or even just people like, oh, like you should only hodl, you shouldn't spend, like circular economy can't, all this stuff gone. And same thing on just kind of like the meme side and kind of like the shorthand side. I'm trying to not like in your tee up, I could pick out like 17 things and like nitpick them with like typical talking points off of podcasts that I've listened to, and then we would go on all the way up till the top of the hour and not get anywhere from me or your audience. That's not helpful. Like, so, and
Right.
I'm not doing that. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. So that's throwing off the old language and starting fresh. Number two, in that vein, something I'm trying to do is I'm trying to like meet people where they're at with the words that they use. And here's an example of that. Balaji is a very smart person, right? Like, very smart person.
Yeah.
Every time he says the word Ethereum, I just swap out Bitcoin sidechain and I keep listening.
Right.
Like, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, and that was and then, so on that same vein, when me and you were tweeting back and forth, like, setting this up, I'm the new shorthand I'm using is just like everything is a side chain of Bitcoin. Like, everything is a side chain of Bitcoin, and that's where then your comments about Solana and Ethereum competing with each other, and like Stacks competing with Ethereum and Solana and all that stuff, like, that is exciting and new ground for me that like I want to continue to just like rolling like over in my brain. Um, and then the third point is what you just said of being like a recent convert. Like, I really like that because it reminds me of the first interview I listened to with Mike Peterson of Bitcoin Beach, who was pushing forward Lightning Circular Economy in El Salvador. It was because he wasn't versed in the day to day of the Twitter of what these wallets can do and what all this stuff is, that he pushed forward and had 700 individuals and 20 businesses running on Lightning. It was because he wasn't versed in the day to day baggage that holds down action in walking out of our door that he went and did that. So that's why I already love this. And that's why this is already a topic that's like good to cover. So, and this whole concept of it also, there's truth ringing in what you're saying, because one time I was on the phone with, I don't even remember the person's handle, but they were like they were an ETH maximalist, and they had like book a call with me to understand Ethereum or whatever. So I clicked the Calendly and booked the call and showed up on my notepad, and we talked through and talked through and talked through. And at one point, we were just talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I was like, I think I threw out the question of like, what would change your mind? And his answer was, if Bitcoin, like the meme of Bitcoin wins as the money, that would. And I'm like, okay, well, I definitely believe that, like, and
Yeah.
I feel
That's a
like
no.
everything's pointing to that. So that's like at all guns now blazing towards everything's just a side chain then. Like, because so then now you're basically building a side chain of
Yeah.
Bitcoin because Bitcoin one is the money. And so that's what I love about, I'm going to just rattle off like Lightning Liquid, RSK, Statechains, Stacks, discrete log contracts are everything in my Web3 DeFi on Bitcoin bucket currently.
Yeah.
Is there anything in that bucket I'm missing? And how do you compare each of those things?
I mean, yeah, I mean, first of all, we're very big into DLCs right now in Stacks. Like, it's huge. Like, we're investing in a lot of open source people who are exploring use cases of DLCs, and we're investing in pure DLC plays as well that may build on Stacks, may not. So again, like, um, we believe in Stacks. Fundamentally, like, as a developer, when I came into the Stacks ecosystem, I was an advisor to the founders for almost a decade now, and I've known them for a long time. They're incredible. They're some of the best people I've ever known in terms of their judgment and their abilities as entrepreneurs. But like, my stacks are liquid. My stacks were liquid from the beginning of this year, and I could have also sold, before Stacks 2.0 launched, the token was available on Binance. I honestly thought about it, but you know, I was like, I believe in this team. And then when Stacks 2.0 came out, I did a deep dive on the tech, and I was like, hey, there really is something here. If I was a developer, that's how I think about things. So a lot of people
Mhm.
ask me like, hey, what data do you look at in terms of building on Stacks, building on Ethereum, building on Slime? Like, I'd look at the tech first. What would I want to build on? And I think about strategically building a company, how what's going to give me the most advantages to build, right? Where am I going to get the best developer support? Which tech is the most mature for developers, the easiest developer experience? How quickly can I go to market? Where can I get capital from? And what does the competition look like? And so Ethereum, in that sense, is really leading in terms of ability to get capital, and Solana as well is doing a great job at this. Maybe it's even easier to get capital in Solana. Ethereum is winning in developer resources, community, open source, being able to build on other people's stuff, but it's slow, it's expensive, and it's crowded, right? And so I would much rather build on something like Stacks that just launched a year ago, where it's a little bit more leading edge. This is why like I was an early, not that early, but I after going from Ruby on Rails and Python, I went over to Elixir language, which is a based on Erlang. It's pretty bleeding edge in terms of WebSockets and things like that because I want to be ahead of the curve, and I want to be building in the area where I can grow with the ecosystem. Like it's a smaller pool. I want to be a big fish in the fastest growing pond instead of being a small fish in the biggest pond. Um, and so I agree with everything that you're saying about for me it's fun, it's like the fundamentals. Like I'm a fundamentals value based investor. I've been dabbling in being a momentum investor in terms of like trading NFTs and things like this. It's not. I don't. I think it requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of finesse. My friends who are momentum investors are like poker players. Like they're up $1 million one day and down $1 million the next. But being a value investor, being a hodler, I identify more with the Bitcoin community. And in fact, when I first came into the crypto world, one of the first things I did was I followed the Ethereum hashtag on Twitter, and after like 2 weeks, I had to like unfollow because I was like, I'm a big rationalist, and I'm very like fundamentals based, and just the amount of hype and like sort of like one Ethereum equals one BTC. I'm like, I have to turn this off. Like this is too much. And I was actually sort of maybe falsely under the impression that like, man, Bitcoiners are flawless. This community, everybody's way smarter, you know, until I forget what it was, but it was like maybe it was like there was a debate between Manib and Adam Back on Twitter, and then all these toxic maxis came out of the woodwork, and I'm like, wow, like actually nobody's perfect, no community's perfect. There's just as many sort of like cultish followers who are just repeating talking points in the Bitcoin community as there are in the Ethereum community, and maybe they're less in the Bitcoin community overall, but you know, in any community, you're going to have multiple sides
Hmm.
of the token of the coin rather,
Yep.
and I think Bitcoiners fundamentally understand um, economics and understand where we need to move as a society. Sovereignty, and that's a very core value of mine. I think a lot of the people, when I look at people on Ethereum and like I understand their acceptance of proof of stake, proof of stake is just it's more centralized than proof of work. There's no other. I don't think anyone can argue against that. Um, you know, um, it accrues rewards to the incumbents. Okay, so the incumbents in proof of stake will always have a bigger advantage than in proof of work. And as an entrepreneur, that's sort of antithetical to my values. But for a lot of people, it's not. That's the
Hmm.
interesting thing. There's a lot of people in this world who are like, yeah, like uh, I haven't worked a day in my life. I got all my money from my parents, and that's totally fair. And like I don't, and like they're like they don't believe in meritocracy, for example, or
Hmm.
they don't think there's anything wrong with that. So at least that's what I think. I don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm wrong.
But
Maybe, but people have different values, and I think that's important to understand and to frame the difference between um, what we're seeing with probably Bitcoin community and the Ethereum community.
mhm. Yeah, look, so I think all the observations I think are super valuable, and like hinging on this thing of like Bitcoin won money, like it won the money.
Yeah,
I Let's just cut straight to the heart of it. The frustrating part that most toxic maxis like have is STX, like the token. And you
yeah,
already referenced this in your introduction of it's either a correct response or an over response to 2017 ICOs. That's currently happening. And it's like I'm a perfect like case study like of that. Bought Bitcoin, bought like everything else, read the Bitcoin standard, on top of getting burned by the ICOs I did buy, and then back to like here we are today, and that's why. But now that like Lightning, like Liquid, DLC stacks, again, all these things are growing in the same way that now this like Web3 and DeFi on Bitcoin discussion is like coming full circle to being like mature enough to like start having the same way that like the circular economy discussion and like using Bitcoin as your base money and like for goods and services is now mature enough to start happening. It's like both of these things have come full circle, and it's a great time to like have these discussions. So just cutting straight to the heart of it, I love everything I'm hearing, but I don't want to hold STX. Like, and
Right.
so when I was like watching the videos this morning and just like ramping up for this, and just this is also based on when I've used DeFi like on Ethereum also, like the slippage, like I'm all for, I want to use the DEX. I want to use the app. I'm open to it. If there's an app or a DEX that's cool, I'm down to use it. I don't want the slippage of holding something that's not Bitcoin while I'm using the app. How do you approach that?
Yeah, that's such a great point. Thank you for like cutting to the heart of it, because I think let's like separate two things first. Like first, let's talk about like why does Stacks need a token? Like
Mm-hmm.
the misconceptions around that, and then secondly, let's go to do you need to hold Stacks? Because the answer is no. And in fact, like this is a core value of the Stacks ecosystem is that um, is like you said, you should be able to hold Bitcoin and only hold Bitcoin, right? And so we don't believe that holding liquid Bitcoin is holding Bitcoin. You know, using using Blockstream for example, you're going into a federated peg, and you're not holding Bitcoin anymore. You're holding liquid Bitcoin. And I've gotten a lot of arguments with people where they're saying, well, liquid Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's like, no, it's not. It's a different token. And um, forget the theoretical design here for a second, because
Mm-hmm.
there's another issue, which is that Blockstream actually has the keys to all of the wallets that are holding your Bitcoin. If they wanted to, they could just take all the Bitcoin out of there. I don't think they would. I'm not saying that they would, but they could, because
Yep.
they have the keys. So you're putting your Bitcoin in that federated peg. It's no longer your Bitcoin. Essentially, you're having liquid Bitcoin, and so a side chain is not using Bitcoin. It's a Bitcoin pegged altcoin, is what I say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a huge misconception. The difference is Stacks has a floating altcoin, right? And so with when it comes back to why Stacks need an altcoin or needs its own token, it's the same reason why Blockstream needs a federated solution to peg you out of Bitcoin and peg you into Blockstream. The only way to have a decentralized open blockchain without giving your Bitcoin to somebody else or to a federation is to issue a new token. And that's because you need to pay the miners. If there was no Bitcoin token, no one would be mining on the Bitcoin network. And so without an incentive for those miners, you they're not going to mine. They're not going to participate in the consensus, and it would be you'd have to do what Blockstream did, which is they went out to 20, I think, or so partners. They signed contracts with all of them one by one, and they're the only people allowed to participate in the federation. Stacks, on the other hand, anyone can be a miner. You could mine tomorrow if you wanted. I could, um, grab somebody off the street. They could mine tomorrow if they wanted. Anybody can participate, just like in Bitcoin. Um, and so you need a token for that. Um, and the other thing is, a lot of people point to, um, how Bitcoin started. Like once we get over that point where we explain, like from a technology perspective, you need to have a token. I think a lot of people get confused with that because they think liquid Bitcoin is Bitcoin, even though it's not. They see Lightning, which is doesn't need a token. That's because Lightning is a network. Lightning is not a blockchain. Lightning does not have a global state. It can't do. Um, in theory, it could maybe do smart contracts, but it's impractical. It doesn't scale. Its strength is that it can't do those things. That's why it's so great as a payments infrastructure. Any of the smart contracts on Lightning kind of things are using client side. They're not actually having the data on the blockchain. They're having the data in your client, which is on your phone. And so there's trade-offs with that. and I prefer to have it on the blockchain as a developer. I think it offers better advantages for software. Um, and so then the second thing that La Bitcoin Maxi comes to, well, stacks raised from venture capitalists, and like Bitcoin, Bitcoin didn't. Well, Bitcoin is a gift from God. Like it's a miracle. Like we won't see any, like the number of open source projects that can do that. Um, there's like, and that can be as successful as Bitcoin. There won't be another one in 100 years. Maybe every 10 years there's one that has a moderate success, an open source project like that, but it's extremely rare. It's more rare than winning the lottery. It's more rare than getting struck by lightning. And so, no pun intended there. And so, um, it takes money to develop software. Like I don't have anything against venture capital. Maybe I don't like a lot of venture capitalists because you have a lot of people in the venture capital community who are money managers and don't have operating experience building companies. Um, but even most venture capital money comes from pensions. Pensions are the number one uh, contributor to venture capital funds, which is retirement funds for everyday people. And so the source of capital, venture capital, I don't have any problem with. Stacks actually did the first ever regulated ICO. There's no ICO that was more above board and legal, right? Literally, it's legal. It's a legal ICO, the first legal ICO. So you could have an issue with that them raising capital. I think it's impractical, especially when we're looking at Ethereum. Um, and the other thing I think is that the fact that it has a token gives Stacks a direct incentive for the builders on Stacks in order to participate in the upside of the network's development. So people have said like, hey, if I started Stacks, I would just, instead of doing a pre-mine or which is a pejorative word, by the way, and it's kind of actually a fallacious idea in of itself in terms of like pre-mine versus fair launch. There's ways to have like there's a ways to achieve what you would achieve with a pre-mine with a fair launch as well. Um, they'd say I would give the proportional distribution to all the Bitcoin holders. Well, it's like, okay, that's great, but then who's going to build out Stacks? Who's going to build on Stacks? Who's going to develop this new division of the coalition? So it's kind of like you need to give disproportional rewards to people who take the risk. You need to have a match between risk and reward. And so the token allows that alignment of incentives where people who are going to take the risk and come into Stacks are going to benefit from the upside and being a holder, right? And Bitcoin will benefit from that in some proportion for sure. But it's like if you are an entrepreneur in a big company, let's say you work at Google and you started Gmail, and or you worked at Apple and you built the iPhone, you know, um, and hopefully Apple is going to pay you like a huge bonus. But you should be like a salesperson. Like you compensate a salesperson with a commission, right? Like that's how you align incentives. Is that the more successful the work that you're doing, the more you benefit from it. And so I think that's fundamental. The next thing is that it also gives the so the people who are directly responsible for the growth of Stacks, for example, like the Stacks Foundation, which is a nonprofit, which has funded, you know, core developers on Bitcoin and is issuing a lot of grants for people building on Bitcoin, not just building on Lightning, not just building on Stacks. Um, as Stacks grows, the value of their treasury grows as well. And the thing is, Ethereum has a like 300, 400 billion market cap. Their foundation has like, I don't know off the top of my head, it's probably billions of dollars, right? Easily. And so I had another comment from Bitcoin Maxi. I said we need billions of dollars to compete with Ethereum. Okay, we need billions of dollars to compete with Ethereum. Where are we going to get that from? Like they have billions of dollars already. Like this is not a fair fight. Like Blockstream raising 300 million is not enough. Like we're talking 30 billion versus 300 million. Okay, who's going to win in that fight, right? And so having a token allows Stacks to do that. Allows it to compete head to head with Ethereum. Uh, it's going to be hard, of course, but it allows us to, if it grows and gets to that level, we have the ability to compete at that level. Versus if you have no money, like again, this is not going to be, no other project is going to follow the trajectory of Bitcoin. Open source, everybody pitches in, everybody helps selflessly and altruistically. Like this is capitalism. You know what I'm saying? And I think Bitcoiners should understand that. Um, as we have many libertarian people in the Bitcoin ecosystem, which I'm a sympathizer with. I'm more of a centrist myself. Um, but I think like there's sort of a cognitive dissonance here where it's like, you're fighting against something that actually is grounded in things that you believe in. And then it's so funny, this even happened um, when the mayor of Miami through Citycoins announced he's going to give um, a Bitcoin wallet to every single citizen or every single resident in Miami, thanks to Citycoins. And
Yeah.
then like all the Bitcoin maxis, toxic maxis rather, heads exploded because they're like, wait, this is good for Bitcoin, but it's a shitcoin. Does not compute, right? And so ultimately, like there's like nothing is pure. Nothing is like, I'm not an idealist. I'm a pragmatist, right? And so if like could could Stacks be successful without a token? Definitely not. 100% no. And but could Stacks have done it without venture capital? I mean, potentially, but 99% no. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so it's all about
Well,
practicality as opposed to idealism. Understanding how do these things actually. If our goal is that Bitcoin is gonna be an alternative to Ethereum in the future, how do we
mhm,
achieve that?
mhm.
Like the answer is Stacks. Like for me, clear as day in terms of my perspective as an entrepreneur and a venture capitalist.
Yeah. Okay. So such good stuff. Uh, gonna pull three things out again. Expertly worded on Bitcoin pegged altcoin versus floating altcoin. I think that is clearly in the framework of like we need new memes and we need new language and we need new shorthand. Great, like perfect shorthand. I don't even mind altcoin in that sense is just a neutral word, like it just is. Like so,
Yeah.
I think fine. Like that's great shorthand for explaining what's happening because that immediately gives me launching points to then talk to you and talk to others about I like okay. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm a Bitcoin pegged altcoin maximalist. Like that's what I am. Like that's what's
Yeah.
in my brain currently. And that's what I was relaying to you when I said I don't want the slippage, but I want to use the app. And so that now gives us
Great.
a
Yeah.
new starting point. So instead of me at the beginning of the conversation nitpicking all of that stuff from the old conversation, now me and you have today said this is where the new conversation is starting. The new conversation, the new relay point is now Bitcoin pegged altcoins versus floating altcoins. Perfect. Okay, so we did that. There's another thing that's being highlighted that I've said a couple of times. We are all learning. I am learning to be a user of open source software. I didn't grow up using open source software. I prefer Squarespace over WordPress. I hate working on WordPress.
Yeah.
It's annoying. It's clunky. It's slow. Where have we heard that before? Like where have we heard that before? I'm a Squarespace maximalist. Like I hate working on WordPress. Okay, so I'm learning to be an open source software user and I'm learning to be someone who talks to open source product people and developers about what it is I want as a user. And we're all learning that. And that also is what's coloring people's language on how they talk about like quote unquote L1s and quote unquote L2s. Okay. And then again, you're also highlighting great points about L2s. If you don't like Lightning, you're gonna talk about Lightning Labs. If you don't like Liquid, you're gonna talk about Blockstream. If you don't like Stacks, you're gonna talk about the Stacks Foundation and the VCs. If you don't like RSK, you're gonna talk about the RSK foundations or whatever. Bitcoin is a gift from God. I
Yeah.
fully agree with
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
and I fully say that. Like, and
Yeah.
you use great software language to explain that also, to back that up. Of just like, look, sure, okay, don't use the spiritual analogies or language or whatever. That's fine. Name another open source project that has bing, 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 like that. Agreed. So
Yeah.
that then goes to the whole point of okay, if Bitcoin is like the bulletproof decentralized thing that just happened or whatever, all the L2s are never going to match that. You can't be in search of an L2 that is as like perfect as Bitcoin because it
Right.
doesn't exist. And so
Exactly.
that's what's leading to all the L2s competing with each other. And so another one of the like when I did that thing of Lightning Labs, Liquid to blockchain, Stacks to the Stacks Foundation, Ethereum, like Ethereum wrapped ETH, like then people try to point at like BitGo or whatever, like wherever the Bitcoin's held. Like, so same thing across all of that. And so so now I'm coming to the conversation of saying, and your answer about why the Stacks token is necessary for the people that are taking the risk to contribute time to like make this thing completely makes sense. So
Yeah.
then, me as a user who's not looking at it from that perspective is then when I'm entering the conversation of saying, "Hey, sweet, what app should I download? And can I just use Bitcoin?" Or like that's me as like
Absolutely.
the random user like walking around the internet, walking up to the party and being like, "Hey, this looks interesting," but currently my brain enjoys Lightning, Liquid, and RSK because I can peg into it because I want number go up of Bitcoin. So that is great.
Yeah.
So
I'm ready to.
final on that, and then I'm gonna switch gears.
Okay. Well, I want to jump. I want to. Can I respond? Just want to jump in
Do it.
because you just
Yeah, yeah,
made
yeah,
so
yeah.
many.
Exactly.
You made so many
Respond.
good points, and
Yep.
you know, like I can not like the culture of Blockstream or Adam Back and how he conducts himself, but I can separate between the architecture and the people, right? And you know, on the face of it, I have no issue with the architecture of uh, Blockstream, Liquid, or RSK. Um, but I think that there's trade-offs, which is going to make it harder to be successful. Like you said, you are um, a Bitcoin pegged altcoin maximalist. I think that was fantastic because um, with Stacks, it's putting more value on not having custodians, right? So that's the key innovation that's possible with Stacks is that you don't have to put your Bitcoin in a federated peg in order to use it. And so, and actually, you won't need to own Stacks to use it either. And so it's coming. It's coming very,
Yep.
very soon. And we
Yep.
have the solutions already, but they're not consumerized yet, right? So they're not like built there. And so like you will be able to have a Bitcoin wallet that integrates Stacks and that your assets on Stacks can be controlled by a Bitcoin address.
Yep.
So that's kind of one of the key innovations. Also, actually, there's a lot of innovations. So
Mhm.
Bitcoin is required for Stacks to exist. If Bitcoin fails, Stacks fails because there's no way to mine Stacks or use it without Bitcoin, right? And the idea that there's Bitcoin being transferred through the proof of spend or the proof of transfer, and that's writing to the Bitcoin blockchain, um, inherently links Stacks in and Bitcoin. And Stacks also has SPV proofs where it can read the state of Bitcoin, react to changes, and every block on Stacks is mined with a block on Bitcoin. And so if you try to do this on Ethereum, um, it won't work because the block times are not synced. The SPV proofs are not well supported. They're not a first class citizen, as we say in development language, where literally like the most supported library um, is like this integration between Stacks and Bitcoin. So as a developer, there's no better ergonomic experience. And the key innovation is that you can do things where you keep your Bitcoin on the Bitcoin main chain, and you could collateralize it through DLCs or through a multi-sig wallet on Bitcoin. Things can happen on Stacks, so you could put Bitcoin in a multi-sig wallet on Bitcoin, some type of smart contract on Stacks that issues you a stable coin or something like that, and then Stacks is watching what's happening on Bitcoin and reacting to it, and that's how it's controlled. So you can only hold Bitcoin, no LBTC, no pegged altcoin, and then you can pay for gas fees. So the only reason you need Stacks is to pay for gas fees, right? Even for using the native stacking feature, which is an amazing DeFi yield product for Stacks, which is sort of native to the blockchain. Um, there's ways you could collateralize your main chain Bitcoin to to trade for stacks with your stablecoin, for example, or just trade right into stacks, and then you could earn a yield that way, so
Mm.
that you can always fall back onto your main chain Bitcoin, if something goes wrong. Um, and so you could be able to pay with the fees one of two ways. That's really the only necessity. You can use a product called Lightning Swap, which
Mm.
is an amazing Lightning Stacks integration
Yep.
where you can, at the point of approving the transaction, you swap from Lightning into Stacks, pay the gas fee, and that's it, and you're done. And like you still have your Lightning, which, again, um, I think I'm pretty much in agreement that, like, again, there's nothing as safe, like there's a spectrum here, right? Like there's nothing as safe as um like using a hardware wallet is different than having your keys on a piece of metal and memorized in your head, versus using Coinbase is, like, obviously all the way on the other spectrum, equivalent to maybe Liquid, which is a fair argument that, hey, the Bitcoin on the Liquid Bitcoin is analogous to Coinbase Bitcoin, whatever, you know, very centralized. Um, Even Lightning, there's some risk that you could lose your Bitcoin, right? Very small risk, very minute risk. But if we're being pedantic, which many arguments are, you know, we should mention that.
Yeah. Okay. Switching gears, we have two segments to close out the show. First one we're pioneering is called "Explain This Tweet." So we're gonna throw a Trevor tweet up on the board, and we're gonna explain it.
Okay, great.
And
Yeah,
then
we
our
need more time
final
for this
question,
segment.
yeah, and then our final question that we like to
Yeah,
ask all our guests, so that this is in the back of your head also, is what's a Bitcoin product or service that doesn't exist yet that you wish did and would use? Okay, so
great.
Trevor, for the Explain This Tweet segment, we're going with this, and we'll throw it up on the screen. It says, "You'd be shocked how many prominent toxic maximalist Twitter influencers are
Yeah,
investing in altcoin private rounds while telling all their followers these shitcoins are unethical." Trevor, what does this mean?
yeah. So if you find the tweet, I mean, I did. Someone was like, name names, and I was like, you can search for it, right? Like, for example, there's a VC website called Signal, where you can search for these individuals and you can find some of their past investments. And some of these toxic maximalists are not even smart enough to remove some of their altcoin investments from that website. Um, and so, listen, like, at the end of the day, there's people who are genuinely idealists. There's people who are generally values based, and a lot of those people don't become Twitter influencers. Like, a lot of Twitter influencers are influencers to get followers. We all know that. But it's kind of like, I forget the bias, but it's like when you read the newspaper and, like, you read an article and you're like, this is bullshit, this is poorly researched, everything, this is wrong. And that's because you know the topic. And then you turn the page to the next section that you don't know, and you're like, this is 100% accurate, right? So it's like, if they're agreeing with me, of course they're not biased. Of course they're, good people, right? But you're going to have that in Bitcoin. You're going to have it in Ethereum. You're going to have it every aspect of life. So, I think it's just like, again, I'm a rationalist. I do believe in Bitcoin. That's um, what I think. It's the best money. It's going to be the only money. But at the same time, like, I'm not a hero worshiper, and I'm skeptical of everybody. I'm skeptical of everything and everybody. It's all rationality for me. It's all logic. I don't have any attachment to anything. And so I would just say to, like, those people who are listening, you know, always research the people that you're getting the advice from, um, it's a good game. It's a good hustle to rally to appeal to the lowest common denominator, because you can get a lot of followers that way. You can get a lot of
Mm-hmm.
followers by being the most extreme and by catering to the lowest common denominator, which um, I don't do. My approach is more to cause fights and arguments on Twitter to get followers. So
Thank you for playing Explain This Tweet.
yeah,
This is fun. All right, Trevor, our final question we like to ask all guests is, what's a Bitcoin product or service that doesn't exist yet that you wish did and would use?
a Bitcoin what service?
Just any Bitcoin product or service that it does not exist yet, hasn't been built yet.
Yeah, I mean, so exactly what we've been talking about Bitcoin wallet with like Stacks integration, where you know, all you have to do is you don't have to know Stacks exists. Like our goal is that nobody knows Stacks exists. We just provide a service to the Bitcoin community. We prevent people from going from Bitcoin to Ethereum. Nothing against Ethereum. Um, Actually, we're not going to prevent everyone from going to Ethereum. Like we want there to be competition, and so we have a couple investments in that space. It's going to be coming soon, and we're very excited about it. But really, like anything that enables people to not have to use Stacks, to just be able to do everything Stacks can do with Bitcoin is the dream. So if you're working on anything like that, hit me up. Like we make 25 investments in very early stage companies twice a year. Um, we look mainly at the team. We look for people who are working full time, who can code, who can build stuff, who are passionate and dedicated. And we'll write checks really early. We'll write checks really late as well, if our platform and our network of founders and mentors can benefit you.
That's awesome. Yeah, keep closing us out. Tell us where we can find you on Twitter and any final thoughts.
Yeah. So I'm at Tio on Twitter, um, and Stacks Accelerator is stacks.ac, and you can find the Bitcoin Odyssey Fund at okcoin.com/Bitcoin Odyssey. OKCoin is our main partner for that. There may be a dedicated website in the future. And to everybody listening, like, listen, you guys are fighting the right fight here. Like, we have to support Bitcoin. Bitcoin is essential, I think, to solving so many of our problems in the future. The fundamentals are strong. All the arguments against Bitcoin right now, as I know them, are pretty much wrong, except for maybe the fact that we need to innovate. That's the biggest thing we need to do on Bitcoin is innovate. We need to welcome mistakes. We need to welcome people we don't like. We need to welcome failure because you can't have innovation without failure. So again, it's about being practical. Where do we need Bitcoin to be in 5 years? It needs to be able to compete with the needs of what the users expect. The mass market doesn't care if it's Bitcoin or Ethereum. They care about the value they get from the app. And we have to recognize that and we have to innovate and keep up with what Ethereum is doing. If we don't, we threaten our position in and really the future of humanity. Like there's nothing that's gonna keep democracy winning. Like World War II could have gone either direction. The good guys don't always win, and so we have to fight the fight. And you guys listening, I applaud you for doing that. Let's keep an open mind and let's try new things and let's let um, things that we don't agree with, you know, flourish and run the experiment and let the experiment fail or succeed. Thank you guys.
Love it, man. Love it. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey all, this is Brian. You can reach me on Twitter at Brain Harrington. Shoot me a DM with any feedback from today's episode. This has been a Choice App production. Bitcoin is becoming centric to personal finance, and we want to help you learn how to better engage with Bitcoin financial services. None of this is financial advice and is for education and entertainment only.